Hey, welcome back to Jeff Needs Sports, everybody. Thank everybody that listens, watches. If you're first time, if you're a returning listener, we appreciate you all. This show is all about the NFL draft. We've got a great guest this week. There's nothing else I can say about it. He's host of Couch Coach Live. He's the Off the Ball Network Senior NFL Analyst, and most importantly, he might be the hardest working guy in podcasting right now. Tonight we got Couch Coach Live to go through his official NFL Draft report card. Coach, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, Jeff. How you doing?
Great, man. I'm glad to have you on. I know you've had a busy week. This is your wheelhouse. This is your time of the year. I heard you last week on the show saying this ought to be a holiday, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
Yes.
the NFL draft now.
Yes.
Ought to be a holiday. I know you've done a show that I think this is your fourth or fifth show in a row talking about this stuff, and I greatly appreciate you being on. I really appreciate you doing this breakdown and this grading process for the network, man. This is super dope.
Definitely appreciate it. And thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, no, you're the best, man. So basically, just to fill everybody in, what Coach has done is he graded every team's performance in the draft, and he gave us his best pick and his worst pick. And some of these will catch you off guard, but let me tell you, my man has thought this out, and he has reasoning behind all of this. And that's kind of what we're here to talk about tonight. We're not going to go – what I would encourage everybody to do is go to offtheballnetwork.com and check out Coach's, the entire list and look at it. And believe me, he's easily reachable on all the social media platforms, at Couch Coach Live on everything, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Look at the list. If you agree or disagree, whatever, get at him. So tonight we're just going to touch on some bullet points that I came up with. But once again, I encourage everybody to go to offtheballnetwork.com and check out the entire list. Reach out to Coach, talk to him, hear him out. I promise. By the time it's done, more than likely you'll agree with him. And if you don't, you'll learn something in the process. So let's just put it that way. So kind of start out here, man. I'm gonna put your list up on the board. And then, well, you know what? Before we do that, let's discuss two things. Let's discuss how you grade a team's draft. We'll start with that. And then I'll ask you about how you grade a pick. But first of all, kind of just go through your thought process when you're grading in the entire draft for one team.
Basically, more so the simple fact of, did they cover their needs at that particular point, or did they get a guy that was a reach potentially at that spot, or did they get a guy that, even though it doesn't fit their need, but it was a perfect spot where they got the best available? I think case in point, you look at like what Dallas did. Just a simple fact of them trading down, even, obviously Surtain and Horn was off the board, but they were able to trade down, still get probably one of the best linebackers in this draft. Those type of factors go in. Cleveland necessarily didn't have to get a cornerback that early, but they end up getting a fairly decent cornerback at that spot. So it's more so that as well too, where you may not have fit the need necessarily, but you got somebody in return for that. So
let me ask you this: because I know, once again, this is the reason you're our NFL guru. When you look at each team, and this is kind of what I do, but I don't know that it's right or wrong. Do you judge their draft on, like, say a team is up and coming like Jacksonville? Obviously, Jacksonville obviously is not a Super Bowl prediction next year. Do you rate their draft different than, say, you would Tampa Bay, who is loaded, ready to come back for the draft? Do you gauge their drafts different, depending on, like, say, I'm getting at here. Jacksonville, if they reach on somebody and you're like, Tampa Bay can afford that. Do you grade each team different based on where you think they'll end up next year?
Yeah, and the beauty thing about this year, what made it almost like a slam dunk in essence, to kind of do more of analyzing of the teams. You look at, when you talk about Tampa. Tampa took care of a lot of their needs, even though they don't have many needs, but they're able to kind of stockpile on depth. I look at like what San Francisco did as far as getting a lot of offensive linemen, those type of things, and then also Kansas City getting a potential first round pick in Nick Bolton in the second round. So you look at those things, and then with Jacksonville, they get a franchise quarterback. They got a guy like, so regardless of, they could take this draft, but they got a guy who I keep on preface this all the time. He's going to save this franchise. The franchise is going nowhere. He's going to put butts in seats and put bodies in that swimming pool. So he's going to be he's going to be a guy. He's their franchise. He's going to be the face. They finally have a face of the franchise in their young in their young NFL history, essentially.
Right. Yeah, it's a good point. So we'll move on from teams. So now I also ask you, I gave you a lot. I gave you a lot of homework for this draft for anybody that doesn't know, but you knocked it out of the park. So I also ask you, kind of give me, and I didn't know a better way to say it other than best pick and worst pick. Not that I'm saying that, you know me. I don't mean that a kid is a worst player or whatever, but as far as worst pick and best pick. So how did you kind of go through your thought process on how you decided each pick? Like, is this best or worst?
And basically, best generally is like what I kind of project out, like going forward. And then it is weird because a lot of the teams that I was giving A's, like, Miami's, Cleveland, I almost to a point I was right. I'm like, well, not actionable, but I'm like, no, we need to have a worst pick. We need to have something there at that spot. And like you said, worst picks not necessarily meaning that it's like this player might turn out to be great, but it's more be great at that particular spot.
Yeah, that's
why. And I think it was Pittsburgh. I think they traded up to get like an offensive tackle. I forgot what round they did. That was kind of one of the things that was kind of skewed my ranking with them because especially at that point there was no need to trade down. To trade up. Pardon me. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's two different things. It's like, and once again, like your worst pick may still be a good pick. I mean, if you give a team an A or an A plus, that doesn't mean. But there was no other process there was nothing else. Let's face it, we're content creators here. We can't, we have to put something out there to make people pick one side or the other. That is part of it. But it was really interesting. I knew that was going to be tough, but you came up with it. So we'll kind of get into that because you've touched on some of the teams I like. So anybody watching right now, I'm going to bring up the actual grade card that Coach made up for Off the Ball Network, and we're going to kind of go through it here and some things that just jumped out to me. There's a couple teams here. Let's start with the good stuff. So I got a short list here. The first one that I see, we've got the NFC up right now. Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. So you gave them an A. So their best pick was Justin Fields. That's not a reach. Their worst pick was Thomas Graham Jr. So let's just take this team here. I won't make you do this for every team. Your thought process on the overall grade, the best and the worst.
So basically, the Bears, I just love what they did, getting the guy in Justin Fields. They finally have a quarterback, and and I've been talking about this all week, where that's the difference between them becoming just a fringe playoff team to actually contenders in the NFC. Now you're hoping that now you have stability at this quarterback position. You're definitely. I'm definitely not envisioning another quarterback carousel that happened last year with Mitchell Trubisky and Nick Foles kind of going do-si-do, who's musical chairs essentially. So I'm curious as what Matt Nagy. We always looked at Matt Nagy as the quarterback whisperer. So this is almost like the no excuse. I mean, people credit him for drafting Patrick Mahomes. He didn't get the fruits of his labor. Obviously, he went to Chicago after Mahomes started. So that too. They beefed up the offensive line. Two guys in Tevin Jenkins and Larry Borum. I think that's going to be definitely solid down the line. And a guy we talked about in the college football season that's really intriguing, Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech.
Yep.
It's funny. He kind of reminds me of kind of what they already have in the running back room. When I look at the kid from NC State, not NC State, but North Carolina A&T, I forgot his name, but the Colvin, no, not Colvin. I forgot. I'm not sure. His Tariq Cohen. Pardon me.
Yeah, Cohen.
So yeah, he kind of remind me similar to that. And I mean, everybody loves him down in Blacksburg. He'll do his thing. And then also, part of my bias, but Daz Newsome, there at the wide receiver position, I think he's going to be solid. He's going to be a guy that's definitely going to help that wide receiver core. He's not probably going to be like I call it the sexy wide receiver, but he'll be a guy who can catch the ball out the backfield and can create yak.
So, but I'm on your side. That I'm more about the yak anymore than I am air yards.
Big time.
I'm not a sexy wide receiver guy only because until one of them gets over the hump and takes the team to the promised land, you got to show me. Other than that, give me somebody that's can catch the ball. If you give me. Here's the thing about the NFL: you get 4 downs to get a first down. So if you can give me a guy that's going to give me 4 or 5 yards an attempt every time, we can start with that. So yeah, I kind of like that. So we'll go through some other ones here. Here's one. We'll jump down here to this one's kind of near and dear to my heart. You gave the Miami Dolphins an A+. Everybody out there knows I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. If you can see, there's a Miami Dolphins placard behind me. Sorry, left hand. So walk me through Miami real quick. So here's the thing about Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So their first pick was Jalen Waddle, who a lot of people consider, some people consider the best wide receiver in the draft, but everybody considered a top 10. Everybody had him top 10. And but you have their best. This is a great one to start with. You had their best pick as Jalen Phillips, which is an edge rusher. So kind of walk us through that, what the difference is there, just so people can get a feel for Couch Coach Live's.
And what's funny, this is not a personal bias. We all know Jeff is my guy, but regardless of who he roots for, it was Dolphins. They knocked it out of the park. The Jalen Phillips was very intriguing. For him to even fall to you guys was like, ooh, was huge. And the thing about it, he played very, very well last year. Like, he was a sleeper guy. I think the issues with UCLA is behind him. So I just love that edge rush. So that's definitely when you look at that team, especially with the Brian Flores defense, and I think he's going to be a guy. I think day one he's going to put somebody on that turf.
And I want to say that you've always kind of been on that. You've kind of always been on that bandwagon of like recognizing, a player's. You were never like caught up in distractions and stuff in college. You were always like, let's see what you can do on the field and recognizing talent, which is real cool. So honestly, tell me about Jared Dokes, their worst pick. Just kind of run me through. This team got an A+, so I imagine it's not a bad.
And I think it's really just more so of just, getting a running back in that position. It was more so than that, because you really knocked it out the park. With just, we talked about, Waddle. I love Javon Holland. I think that was the guy that was kind of like a value that you got at that point. And then I like Liam Eichenberg, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame. So I like, and to solidify him with Austin Jackson on the other side, I'm like, this is
and And let's recognize too, you've been telling me about this for a year that this is, if I'm correct, this is all sort of part the 2 draft picks in the first round. That was still part of the Houston trade, correct?
Yeah,
and because you were on that from day one last year. That if this all works out, let's say Jalen Waddle's an all-pro player. Let's say your guy Jalen Phillips is as good as you think. That draft, that trade. I'm sorry, that Tunsil trade can be huge for them to get that pick right there. That can turn a franchise around if this winds up being it turns it into a playoff team. And you've been, kind of pounding that table for a while. So that's awesome.
Yeah. And you're going to get a first-round pick from San Francisco next year.
Yeah, right.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
I stand by, and I'm with you. Like, I'm not biased either. What I see is that Flores is the first guy from the Belichick tree that is on the path that Belichick stayed on. And I think that if they have a terrible season last year, it might set that back. But I think he bought himself some time by having such a great season. And I think everything they're doing, I'm on board with as a fan. And as an analyst, I'm like, you can't argue with it all. So we'll go to a couple more here. You touched on them, and we'll just kind of expound on them. And this is a big one, but nobody can argue. A lot of people think that this team had the best draft overall. The Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they had the best draft. There's no argument that they had a good draft. And this is a team that when they were making picks, I'm like, that team got better. Like this team, it's a playoff team. It's hard for people to remember when you say Cleveland Browns, this is a playoff win team. Like they went to the divisional round of the playoffs, took Kansas City to the mat. We all know that, there was a big play and all that. So this is a team ready. They got a lot of talent. And so then you have a playoff team at A-. That's huge. So let's talk a little bit about the Cleveland Browns, and especially let's talk about their best pick, Jeremiah Owasu Karamoa.
They got a top 15 player in the second round. Like
it's insane.
And what's scary about him is just the versatility of him, linebacker wise. He's versatile, and then coupled with Clowney on one end, and then you also got Myles Garrett on the other end. And like, this is going to be a potentially scary team. If this, and then also coupled with the, and I know we kind of talked about Newsome kind of was like an iffy pick.
Yeah.
But then, in essence, we kind of talked ourselves out of the doubtness, because we're like, well, you can't go wrong with having, quality depth at the cornerback position. Yep. But I mean, I tell you, this Cleveland team is a potential, is a contenders in this league.
Yeah,
I'm loving what they're putting together.
Yeah, I could not argue with their draft. I thought Newsome, like, I was on board. Like, you just stockpile good players, because it's the thing. It's the NFL. They're playing 17 games next season.
Yep.
You're going to have injuries. Like, everybody, like, I always get this question, they'll draft a guy, and then somebody always, asks me, well, what are you going to do with that guy? Like, keep him. You can have, like, I understand you have so many roster spots and it's tough, but you got practice squads. Like, you have room to keep good players on the field. We can talk about Tampa Bay Buccaneers when their running back situation last year. You know what I mean? And the starting running back of the Super Bowl, they got halfway into the season, or 5 games, 6 games in.
Yeah.
And he was, he was one of the difference makers. So you need depth. You just need players. I'm all about, if you see a really good player there, don't reach for someone to fill a position. Go ahead and take another good player and then figure it out. You know what I mean? Because we tend to see the NFL as a one season league, but that's not how it works. In 3 seasons from now, Newsome might be the guy that, keeps things afloat or gets you over the top or whatever. So yeah, I can't argue with that. Cleveland had a really good one. And then another one that you had on there, we'll touch on these. You kind of talked about it, but I've got this team's interesting, because I like what you got here. So Coach has Jacksonville Jaguars an A-, which is pretty good. And then his best, obviously, Trevor Lawrence. You had to pick him, no brainer. His worst is Travis Etienne. And me and you agreed on this, especially like on draft night. I was like, you can't take, Etienne at this spot, but they did. So let's kind of go through the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence is obvious. He's the best quarterback in the draft. I think he's widely considered one of the best in the last 10, 15 years. Prospects. Let's talk about Travis Etienne. You have him as the worst pick. So I kind of want to go through how you come up with that.
Well, it was just more so just where he was at that spot, because I think that was their 25th overall pick. Well, I think they could have got better value, and even though it worked out for them, even though they did get Tyson Campbell the very next day, but I could even Tyson Campbell could have potentially been there at 25. Well, that could have been a reach, but I just think their need really wasn't at running back at that point, because when I look at a first round pick, like you said, I know we talk about, but we want you as a first round pick. You want that person to be your starter, like whatever position you have, and he potentially may be a starter for them next season. It's iffy, but I think they could have got him at a fairly at a lower position. That they definitely could have pulled a trigger on him Friday afternoon.
And I I don't think he's irreplaceable either. I'm not. I won't do a show about how much I dislike running back, but we all know the story. But that's what I say. Your first round picks, in my mind, ought to be at least a 10-year starter, maybe 3 or 4 Pro Bowls. Like that's what I'm not saying they should all be that. Like they're disappointments, but that's what you're thinking. And I just don't see how taking a running back that doesn't have a full toolbox. He's got a great, upper end, but he can't do it all. And that's not his, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of players can't do it all, and that's why I think at this point, they should have took whoever the best defensive player is, maybe an offensive lineman, something like that, more of a foundation. We all know that regardless of how good running backs are, you can't build a foundation on them anymore. It's just not the way it is because of injuries and schemes and things like that. So I like that one. I think that will jump off the page with people, for being honest. So that's some of the best. So let's move on to a few of these that that jumped off here, because I will admit I missed a lot of the latter end of the draft. But here's a team that, when I was going through your list, really jumped off at me. Seattle Seahawks got a D-, which I know Coach, he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met. That means that he had to talk himself out of an F, because what I'm guessing is you looked at one player and were like, maybe I'm wrong about that player. That's the only thing that kept them from an F. You got their best as Stone Forsythe, an offensive tackle, and you got their worst as Trey Brown. So walk me through the Seattle thought process when you went with them.
Well, with Seattle, they only had 3 picks, so it was just like that was kind of partially one of the reasons why they were graded so low.
That's fair though.
The 3, and I want to say Forsythe will be their best pick because he'll probably be the one that'll probably more than likely will be starting, because their offensive line is that bad. Like I do, I like Dwayne. I forgot his last name, but their wide receiver they got in the 3rd round. He was a solid pick. So they got him, and then Trey Brown, which is a cornerback. I think he was their middle round pick. And it's just the fact it's incomplete. I really wanted to do incomplete, but I like, you know what? We're just gonna give him a D-.
That's the proper grade. Is incomplete. So we got a couple more on here. Here's a good one here. This is an interesting for everybody. The Green Bay Packers got a C-, but I think they had a really interesting draft, because what was it? Was it the day of the draft the Aaron Rodgers story comes out?
Yes.
And so then all of a sudden they've got a draft not knowing if they're not only Hall of Fame quarterback, but legendary quarterback is even coming back to the team. He's basically said he doesn't want to. So now they've got a draft based on, we have no idea what next season, has in store. They wind up with a C-. And ironically, their best pick is Amari Rodgers out of Clemson, wide receiver, which we might talk a little bit about Amari Rodgers, like how low he was in the draft. Like, you want to talk about a guy that probably played too many games. This guy was great from day one to the end of his career, but I think he became such a staple at Clemson that this is what I think happens a lot of times in the NFL draft is people get caught up in the newest thing, what explodes off the screen. Amari Rodgers played so many games, I think he just got forgot. I remember when this guy's a freshman, they're like, okay, he's one of the best in the country. And then for him to fall to the Packers when he did, really, that's a steal. But now all of a sudden you may not have a quarterback to throw to him. But let's talk about Eric Stokes. You got him at cornerback. That was their 1st round pick, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk about the Eric Stokes pick, and then we'll go back to the number.
And the only reason why I did that because of the reach. At that point, because I look at this and we talked about this even on the show on Thursday for the draft show, where he's the 2nd best cornerback at Georgia. I think because is it Tyson? Yeah, that's right. Because Tyson Campbell was their number 1 corner at Georgia, and then he got drafted in the 2nd round. And versus him, he got drafted almost 10 spots in front of him. The thing is, and my thing is, granted they do need another wide receiver to kind of take the responsibility, not more so of just to help that load with Devontae Adams.
Yeah.
But to me, he was, saying, well, nobody really was available. But then last year, you traded for a quarterback. You traded you traded up to get a quarterback. So you didn't want to trade up again to get a wide receiver, and then this whole circus with Green Bay, like we said, it was crazy because of the whole day. I think probably about mid afternoonish. That's when all the rumors came out, and then I remember, I don't know if I was on another show that before I went on Thursday, and there was a rumor then circling that Denver was had the odds-on chance of getting Aaron Rodgers. People was even thinking that Patrick Surtain was going to go. That's why Denver drafted him to get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that's what I'm telling you. It was so many innuendos and rumors circling that, and that's why everybody was kind of questioning Denver of getting him, because they were like, well, he might be going to Green Bay, which that still can potentially happen. But in the same token, it's it was just odd. That was just such a very weird night for Green Bay.
So I got two questions. So question one, how do you feel about the Amari Rodgers pick? To me, I think
I think it's great.
I think it's great.
And that's the thing with Clemson, because Clemson is really literally wide receiver U.
Yes.
I think you really can't go wrong with receivers from Clemson. I forgot because a couple of their receivers got drafted. I forgot. I should know I know his last name. Obviously, it's Powell.
Yeah.
I forgot his first name. Carnell Powell.
They all play. Even Hunter Renfrow.
Yes,
is in the league.
Yes, a balling.
Dude, yeah, that dude's built like me, and he's out there balling. And I mean that as respect to Hunter Renfrow. Anybody that's in the league. I saw the Amari Rodgers pick, and I'm like, what I really wanted to say was, this is why you don't take these wide receivers at number 4. If I can get Amari Rodgers here,
Cincinnati.
You know what? Hey, we'll talk about it. Let's do that. We'll go into that here in a second. But then my next question is, do you think that Green Bay in this draft drafted as if Aaron Rodgers was going to be there or not? I couldn't really tell.
I say not.
I think kind of not.
And the thing is, and it's so weird. I feel like with Green Bay, I feel like we're in deja vu mode. Because last year we were questioning the Jordan Love pick. Now we're questioning the Eric Stokes pick. And we kind of sit down and a lot of people was upset about Aaron Rodgers kind of creating a stir, but a part of him was probably thinking to himself, my window is closing. There's maybe a slight crack in the window, but it's about to get shut sealed, because now you're looking at San Francisco's coming back and they're going to be healthy and what have you. So, now you could be, at best, maybe the third best team in the NFC. And that's, then that means you go and play Tampa again with that roster. Could you beat a newly revamped San Francisco 49ers team? And I think he understands, look, y'all gotta do something, get me out of here or else, because and I think somebody was saying now it's weird to think that he's become somewhat irrelevant compared to a 43-year-old Tom Brady. Now he's the king of the NFC, so it's you would have thought his time would be up.
That's a good
everybody talking about Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I don't think me and you, either one of us, are huge Aaron Rodgers apologists. I think we all know that there's something missing there with Rodgers, and that's fine. I just don't think that I've said for years that I don't think that whatever percentage you are committed, if I don't know what player we're going to say, Walter Payton's 100% committed. Yep. It may be Rodgers is 85, which is fine. I do not begrudge somebody for having things outside of football and things like that. But I also won't say that when it's all said and done, I don't think he cares as much about not winning another title as people may think. But I don't want to speak for somebody, but I think in my opinion, I think Green Bay was they're in the back of their mind, they're thinking about moving on. So, so one more team I saw in the worst, and we'll talk a little bit about Cincinnati because I got a lot of Ohio fans here. This jumped out to me just because I think that I don't know what this team is doing. You brought it up draft night. The Las Vegas Raiders. I have no idea what they think they're doing. Like their team is middle of the road, and it feels like they draft middle of the road. For the last 3 years, it's like, do they believe in their quarterback? Do they not? You've got him as a D plus, and I think my guess is I'm going to try and get in the mind of Coach here just because I know him so well. Speaking of which, we're just past our 1 year anniversary, Coach, of me and you working together, which is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
My guess is that the only reason they got a D plus is because Trevin Moehrig fell to him. Other than that, so their best pick, you got Trevin Moehrig, and then their worst, you got Alex Leatherwood. So let's do the Trevin Moehrig thing and what you think of him, and then we'll go to Leatherwood, and we'll talk about where the Raiders are headed.
So I think Moehrig was definitely a great for him. He was a guy that many of us looked at as potentially like a first round guy. So, to get him where you got him, even though they had to trade up to get him, but that's still kind of a value pick. So I definitely think that definitely helps their depth safety wise. Definitely teaming them up now. I'm going to say Oakland, Las Vegas. So I definitely think that's going to be.
He's a guy too that I've been just pounding the table for guys that can play different positions. This is the guy that you can keep in the game. You don't have to, if you need to drop him down to cover somebody in the slot or whatever, it's fine. I know we still call them safeties, but if we started calling them defensive backs, it would make more sense. But I love this pick. And I think that's the only thing that kept them out of the doghouse with you. Alex Leatherwood. Nobody likes, Alex Leatherwood's a guy that I hear maybe would have dropped to 3. What was your opinion?
Yeah, I didn't see him in any first round mock drafts. Obviously ours, just people that know this stuff. It's not even checking, not even having him there. And the thing about that killed me about that pick, because you look at this is a trend of what ended up happening where. How everybody kind of traded down. You look at what Dallas did. And it's funny, we thought Dallas was crazy with trading down with Philly and the Giants trading down with Chicago, but they should have followed suit. To me, you could have got him the very next. He's another one where you could have got him. Hell, you might could have got him Saturday morning. Right? I mean, potentially.
I've heard a lot of guys say that, man, and I defer to you guys, but I've heard some people say that he may not be able to play tackle, and you can't draft a guy in the first round if you think that you got to switch positions. Here's the thing: I have no problem. He may move to guard and be a 10-time All-Pro guard. That's fine. You can't pick him at that spot,
right?
To be that guy. If you want to pick a guard at that spot, I have no problem with, because I'm here to say that I am not as hung up on tackles as I was 10, 15 years ago. But if you're going to pick a guy that in the first round and you got to move positions, to me, that's a mistake. I think the Raiders are just, I don't think they helped themselves in the draft, and except for, Moehrig, of course, and they're a little bit of a mess right now.
And the thing with that is, you actually could have, because you could have got Darrisaw if you wanted Darrisaw,
right?
But if you didn't, just trade down, get more assets, and because teams were going to jump, because you think about it, because they was 17th or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, teams could have easily jumped for you. Maybe hell, you could even did something with Green Bay. They could have, if they, I know somebody would have been desperate to get their pick. I think they had 7. I think they was either 7 or whatever. They would have had a trading partner. And they could have got some compensation to kind of move down or what have you. The thing is, and that's the thing where, and we talked about this all the time, and it's cool to have somebody that you want, and that's fine. We have no problem with what you're doing with that, but who you want. Your skill is the price is. the price is too low. Like, to me at this point, what you need to do, trade down. You'll get who you want, and you'll get more value.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter
how it works. I mean, it's like everything. This is like, why would I buy something today and I can get it tomorrow for like 50% off?
Yeah, why would
I mean, essentially.
One of our viewers, they did not get a quarterback. Stephen Gillespie asked,
and that's the problem.
Yeah, so they're that's what I mean. They're going with what they did last year, which is whatever. If you want to go through with that, but they, Morig helps them, but that's it. That's all that helps them going into next year, and and a lot of times. That's how I judge a draft is, are you better next year, unless you're a team that's not going to be good for 4 years. So you brought it up. Well, now this is a team that I predict won't be playoff ready until at least, we'll say 3 years from now. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. You kind of touched on it earlier. And, we'll talk about it. You have their best pick is Jackson Carman, which means that you don't think Jamar Chase was their best pick. So this is a great example. Let's talk about your thought process here. So, make us understand.
I'm gonna tell you, and I've been beating the drum for Penei Sewell since the advent.
Should have been the pick there,
right? I've been ever since. I even had the Jets wanting to get him if they would have kept Sam Darnold. You just look at just the simple fact of just what Penei Sewell is. He's a generational talent, and you need to protect your investment. So I looked at that situation where it was a reach, and Jamar Chase is going to be good, but did you see Myles Garrett at the draft the other day? Y'all got somebody to guard him, negate him, so he won't get your quarterback back on the ground.
Yeah,
but and like you said, and even to Steven's point, where like I said, I even I think we did one in mock drafts. I was like, they got wide receiver depth. They got I looked at because I think was that T. Higgins, another Clemson wide receiver.
Yes, a good Clemson wide receiver.
Right.
I thought he might be the best wide receiver in the draft coming out last year.
Right, and I thought for sure, and I think he's going to be a guy that could be a 1,000-yard receiver in this league, perennially. I think it's almost like yearly. I just did not like the fact of getting him at that spot.
Well,
because you look at and people was clowning Detroit, they was all happy, they got a franchise quarterback. But guess what? They got a franchise left tackle in Penei Sewell, and they're gonna get their quarterback situation straight next year, potentially.
And here's the thing, I saw this happen, not just because I'm an Ohio State fan, but this is a guy that I watched, growing up, Orlando Pace, and I saw him go to I believe he went to the LA Rams. I don't think they were in St. Louis yet. If they were in St. Louis, it was early. And this is the same situations to where we know this guy is good. Let's see what we can do. And then they build a team. But what's important about when you have offensive linemen, it's a lot of it is that guy, first of all, he's in every play with your quarterback. So there's really 6 guys that are on the field every play, and that's your 5 offensive linemen and your quarterback. So that has to be a unit, not just the offensive line. So when you want to talk about making a quarterback better, there's your unit right there. So now if you get a guy like Sewell, if he does want to be that good, you've got a guy that's on the field every offensive play of every game that can help your team. A wide receiver can only do so much. When it's 4th and 1, that wide receiver, I'm not saying he can't catch a pass, but he's not doing as much. He can only do so much, as to where an offensive lineman, if you think, like you say, is a generational talent, you're getting double the snaps than you get out of a wide receiver. And we all know a wide receiver, once again, they need the ball. An offensive tackle does not need the ball. So I totally agree with you. And I said all week, and they didn't do it, Cincinnati was in the prime spot to really pick up some draft picks and really build their roster by moving, maybe dropping 2 spots in the draft, maybe 3 or 4, and they could have built their roster up. I don't know. I'll ask you, do you think that the Chase thing was because of Joe Burrow? I mean, to me, that's ridiculous.
I mean, potentially. I mean, you would think that would probably make more sense because I would assume it was some form of it's some form of, not that he was in the room per se, but it might. I can say he potentially influenced it. If it had to put a percentage on it, maybe about 30-40%.
So how do you feel about though? I
don't like it. Like I said, but I love it for Detroit because next year Spencer Rattler's there, or maybe the 2021 Heisman Trophy winner Sam Howell lands into their lap in Detroit, and I mean,
but the thing is, though, we've saw in football we don't know who's going to be available next year. Like I think another thing we've saw this year is quarterbacks are starting to move more than they ever did. So I think, and here's the thing, I should be totally fair. We don't know. We do not know that Goff's going to be a failure in Detroit. Like, I'm just saying, I mean,
ask Steven Hill.
We're not going to go down that road.
Steven, tell him.
We don't know yet. Even though I don't think it's going to work out, then I'm like, well, what's my reasoning? I mean, the guy's, he's got playoff wins. He's been to a Super Bowl. Like, he's got more success. He's got more success than the guy they let go, if that makes any sense. Now, I think they're the same? No, not at all. But we said that about, Alex Smith when he went to Kansas City, things like that. I'm saying, like, I just want to be totally fair that even though I think that they need a quarterback in the next couple of years, we don't know. They've got a young, highly paid quarterback. That's all I can say about it.
True.
But they're an interesting pick. And then so let's talk about Cincinnati. You had their worst pick as Chris Evans at running back, and I'll just ask you why, just so people understand your list.
Yeah, I think just where they got him at that spot. I just think they could have addressed another need at that spot.
To me, with running back, it was more so. Running back, get undrafted free agents, get somebody that's been passed. Like, I don't know, but then once again, I know it's just me and running backs.
Yeah, I know.
So another one we got to talk about. This is an awesome one. This will probably. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, I guess nothing changed on your end. Sorry, I got a lot of screens going on here, people. I apologize. We got a lot to cover. So this one will probably get the most clicks when they see the list on offtheballnetwork.com. Let's talk about Dallas Cowboys. Now, there's two things about this. I want everybody to know that my man, Couch Coach, is the rock solid fan of the Washington football team. Live or die, supports them, but he's not blinded by him. He has the Dallas Cowboys. He gave him a B+ on draft day, which I thought was a little high, but once again, I'm not the expert here. So he's got Dallas Cowboys at B+. So, but here's where it gets a little sticky. He's got their best pick as Jabril Cox, linebacker. That's important. He's got their worst pick as Josh Ball, offensive tackle. We're going to cover both of them because the more we talk about Dallas Cowboys, for some reason, people care. Whatever. So anyway, as much as I don't want to talk about the NFC East, let's talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys because I think everybody, including me, thought the best pick in the draft was Micah Parsons to the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Coach, I need you to tell everybody why Jabril Cox was actually the best pick.
And let me preface this. Parsons was a fantastic pick at what they got him. And I didn't put him as the worst. I like that pick, but I love the Jabril Cox pick and where they got him at. They got him in the 4th round. Oof. He's going to be a guy I think he's going to be the Jalen Smith replessment in my first opinion. I just like what he does. He's, as a Washington fan, it does pain me, but what he could do, he has great ball skills. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be pretty much an outside linebacker. He is a beast. Like when you sit down, you think about this is a simple fact of the transition last year. He did a great in LSU. Obviously they come off the national championship. They looked horrible. They had bad stretches. Now, imagine Jabril Cox was at North Dakota State and then transferred as a graduate at LSU, and he was tremendous in that one. You look at, I think he had like 3 interceptions. So you just look at him just from that standpoint. I think he's going to be he's a great value.
Yes.
And like you said, and like I said, I always even said in the beginning, like Dan Quinn is going to turn his defense around. And you look at, I think their first 6 picks were defense, and you just look at just this team by itself, they really improved their defense. And now you just look at that linebacker core with Parsons and also Cox there. Now, as far as now you want to see how Van Der Rush and Smith, they've been kind of the inconsistent linebackers on that team. So, coupled with that, and I think Jabril Cox is definitely going to fill that bill. And to get him they got him Saturday morning. This ain't a Friday night pick. Thursday or Thursday night pick. They got that man Saturday afternoon.
And
like,
yeah, and here's the thing. I'll get on my soapbox a little bit here because this is what I love about the draft. What they did in this draft, we'll just say Dallas, for instance, since we're talking about them. What they did was sometimes you can draft a player like Micah Parsons. When they drafted him, I already thought this. And then when they got Cox, I'm like, oh my gosh. What they do is they allow everybody to play in their position. So guys that may have, limited ability, but like really good in one, aspect of their game, now they can do it. And this is what we saw. I keep telling preaching it, but this is what we saw Tampa Bay do last year. Those 2 linebackers at Tampa Bay, I mean, they played a 4-2-5, sometimes a 3-2-6 in that Super Bowl because their linebackers could cover so much ground. And that's what I said about Parsons when they got him. I'm like, he shrinks the game, he speeds it up. And we also talked about everybody, for some reason, everybody, when you have a really good quarterback, everybody wants to go offense, giving weapons. Well, you know what a weapon is? When you have a really good defense and the other offense comes on the field and they are stressed because they think they got to score points. Because guess what that happens? You throw incompletions and then you punt. Now, all of a sudden, Dak Prescott's, starting every series from the 45-yard line, you know what I mean? Or the 35-yard line at worst. So now he's got a shortened field. And every time he scores, the other offense is like, okay, we have to score here. So that pressure, that changes a game. That is really important to a game. That's why sometimes when you got a really good quarterback, the best example I ever saw was the Denver Broncos when they won the Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. That guy could barely throw a ball 15 yards. That defense made every possession of the other team so important that you couldn't outscore them. You know what I mean? So I have no problem with Dallas doing this. I think they made all the right decisions. I thought last year they reached, they went for CeeDee Lamb and all that. Nothing against CeeDee Lamb, but I thought they should have done this last year. They did it this year. I'm not saying like Dallas or anything, but I'm just pointing out that I draft based on, did you make your team better? And I think they made their team better, and they made it a little easier on their quarterback at the same time.
Yeah, and I like the whole Dan Quinn I said that even when he got hired, like that's a tremendous upgrade for their defense, and you get these guys here where it's going to definitely. And it's funny, it might be like almost like the Denver role versus, almost to your point, Jeff, where we looked at, remember the first Super Bowl when they lost to Seattle, they were this offensive juggernaut.
Exactly.
And then now they're going to probably transition to this a very stout defense. And I definitely think they're going to improve like immediately with these picks, and then also with Dan Quinn. Like I definitely that's probably one of the biggest offseason acquisitions as far as coaching wise that in the NFL.
Yep. I think for once they finally did it. So I'll just put you on the spot for a few more questions here.
Right.
I promise we could. I would love to sit here and go through every team by team and do this. Once again, everybody go to offtheballnetwork.com, check out Coach's list, and get at him. Ask him the questions. I totally recommend that. But I want to ask you a few. Like, what? Okay, so let's toot your own horn here. What's a draft pick that you were like, I told you, like that was a great pick, like that's what I would have done. Maybe nobody else saw. Anything stand out through the draft that you were like, I'm the smartest guy in the room?
Funny is it sound, even though I went against my grain. Trey Lance. because a lot
Oh
of
yeah, I
people
wanted
look
to
at
talk about Trey Lance.
because a lot of people, and this is funny where I keep on telling people, like, because people, everybody's like, oh, he wants Mac Jones, because I pretty much had Justin Fields going to San Francisco, and everybody kept on saying, well, he doesn't like athletic quarterbacks, he doesn't like this, that, and the third. I was like, as a Washington football fan, he look what look what he did with G3, and then also even though Kirk Cousins, in that little 10 year that they had together, I like the thing with Cal, like that's what makes the genius of him. I like how what he does with his quarterbacks, essentially, he works to their strengths, not to their weaknesses. So he carves out a game plan that help amplifies their strengths. So you look at, especially looking at a close hand with the situation in Washington, you've seen that way he was able to kind of get those play action plays for RG3 and what have you. And the thing is, I think he knows, and just the way this game is played now, he's got to have that type of quarterback. And I don't ever think more so he shied away from it, just more so just what he had. I mean, like I told people, dude, this man, Brian Hoyer, he had the Cleveland Browns 6-3 in 2013. Like, are you kidding me? Like it's great what was going on now. Like, I mean, that was crazy to think they were 6-3 going into like the half of that season. I think it was in 2013 or 2014. I didn't forget what year. And then he goes to Atlanta, kind of, bogart his way out of Cleveland to go to Atlanta. And he turned Matt Ryan into a Super Bowl to MVP, pardon me. But he just didn't get the job done. But I definitely think that was kind of one of those ones where everybody's like, oh, he wants a Mac Jones. He just wants a statue in the pocket. I'm like, no.
I never bought that. Now, I will say that I said it was Fields until about a couple weeks before, and then I switched to Lance. And once again, I tell everybody, I don't have a problem with that, because every time I bring up Justin Fields, should have went higher, they're all like, well, Trey Lance is better. And I'm like, well, that's fine. I won't argue that. Like, if you think Trey Lance is better, like, I respect that, but that doesn't mean Justin Fields couldn't have went next. So that was my whole thing about that. But I have no problem with them picking Lance. I think that's the right pick, for sure. I think once again, I think San Francisco got better in the draft. But overall,
oh yeah,
no, go ahead.
And man, I forgot to mention this too, man. Your boy is gonna be a beast there, Trey Sermon. I can already see him I can see him having like Moses type of runs, like instantly. Like, I was like, yo, that's another value pick. I was like, this is gonna be crazy. Like, he gonna run on that line.
That's a really good offense. That's a really good offense for him.
Yeah, man.
That's where I don't understand. Once again, it's a different show, but I don't understand the discrepancy of how you say, okay, we're taking Najee Harris. Let's talk about the Najee Harris pick. And then. So the value between him and Sermon, like, how far do you really think that is? Like, okay, let's put it this way. If Pittsburgh would have got Sermon in that same spot, if you flip Pittsburgh and San Francisco, people would be going crazy. Oh, this is the next Franco Harris.
Like, and that's one thing too, where and I feel so bad because, like, the running back position has been so devalued so many times, and it's crazy because it used to be a situation where literally you get that guy, he's your franchise, he's your cowbell back. Like, I remember the days of, like, even and it used to be that way until, like, Trent Richardson situation.
Yep. That
happened, and then you start seeing a little bit coming back with Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, also Leonard Fournette. And I thought that was going to be another trend that came, especially after the success of Dallas, where, as far as when that first year they went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But that was just due to the fact, obviously, with their offensive line. But I definitely thought that trend was going to continue. But now it's to a point where it's like, it's starting to get there, but now you're not going to – guys aren't going to be slotted that high, like, as far as, like, it was crazy, even the fact that 25 – is where running back was drafted.
For the record, I have Najee Harris, and no offense to the guy Najee Harris, like, what he did for his celebration with the homeless shelter, like, all that's a great story. I really, really I hope he's a 10,000 yard back Hall of Famer. But as far as picking in the draft, I thought he was one of the biggest reaches of the draft. And it's not because of him, it's because of the position. And I understand people are like, well, you got to have a running back. But if Pittsburgh gets Trey Sermon in the 4th or 5th round, I think people are like, they could have got, like, let's say they get Barmore in the 1st round and they get Sermon in the 4th.
Right.
They have a great draft.
Right. You lost the offensive lineman. So it's just like,
yeah,
you get a running back. Like,
I don't know what this obsession is with. I mean, let's put it this way. And then everybody's like, so here would be my argument real quick. The argument is, well, they lost John Connor. And I'm like, yeah, that all they had to do was replace Connor. Like, he's like, how hard was that? Like, you didn't need to draft a running back in the 1st round to replace. There's practice squad guys all over the country that could replace that. I thought that was a mistake, but a lot, it is what it is. I'm not the expert here or whatever. So overall, before we get out of here, what was your take when you look back at the 2021 draft? Do you think it's going to be a good class, bad class? What's your grade on the entire class overall as of right now?
It's a great class.
I think it's a good class.
It's a solid A. It's gonna be a class where I think you're gonna have a lot of production. You may not have guys going straight to Canton, and it's funny. We did a show yesterday and we were talking about who's more likely to go to Canton, and we just had threw out a few names, but you can maybe think of at this point maybe a handful of them. But I think you're gonna have solid guys contribute. And I think the rich got richer. I mean, when you look at, like we talked about earlier, you look at like what Kansas City did in the draft.
Yeah, great.
Also, Tampa Bay, San Francisco, the teams that are like contenders in this league got needs, and those guys are gonna, be, the part of their continued success going forward. So the rich got richer.
That's a great point. The good teams had good drafts.
Yeah.
I like that aspect of it. So that's a good point. I thought it was a really good draft, especially looking forward to next year's. Like, obviously we rate unfortunately we rate everything by a quarterback draft, but I think this draft is going to lean. I think there's going to be a lot of really, really good defenders come out of it because it's just we're one of those turning points in football to where the NFL is catching up with college, and they're like, oh, we need a lot of speed, especially in the front seven. I think we're going to see more. We're going to see more amoeba defenses and stand-up front sevens than we've ever saw in the NFL this year. In 10 years, I think that teams might only have 2 defensive linemen with their hand in the ground. I think that's the direction that we're going. The Patriots have been doing it for years or whatever. So I think this is going to be remembered as a defensive draft, even though we don't have the classic edge rushers. There's a couple of them. But I think there's a lot of versatility in it. Wide receivers was a pretty good draft. Quarterbacks, I think there's at least 2 or 3 that I hope that Lawrence, Lance, and Fields are really good out of this draft for their sake. There's no way. I don't think next year's quarterback draft can be as strong. But overall, what's awesome about the draft is speculation. Potential. That's what you said. We call it potential now. It was a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, man, it was a lot of fun spending the draft with you and the guys at Off the Ball Network. Anybody listening or watching, just go to Couch Coach Live's pages and see what he's done this week. He's done 4 or 5 shows talking about this stuff. They're all just as good. This is why he's our guy. He brings it. He brings everything about it, and he's rational. It's funny because you can be a fan, coach, but you're also one of the best at keeping your mind straight. You know what I mean? Like this isn't Cruise Island,
right? And don't let Cruz know I've been complimented about the Cowboys tonight. Don't.
No. I will tell.
This goes against our bro code. Me and Cruz out Washington football bro code. But hey, I gotta be objective tonight. I have to be the consummate professional.
Nah, you're the best, man, and you're an absolute pro. So everybody, go check out Couch Coach Live. The podcast. You can find it everywhere. You guys know how to do it on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Guys always putting out really good stuff. It's never a waste of your time. That's one of the highest compliments I can give a podcaster. I want to thank you for coming on, Coach. This was, I started off with like, hey, this will be a fun show, and then by the end of it, I'm like, well, okay, I got smarter. I'm a better podcaster now than I was when I started this show, man. And all goes to you. So, and happy anniversary too. I know.
Yes.
We're somewhere around a year. We you guys can go back on Jeff Needs Sports and find our we did a recap of the Bulls documentary that they did last spring, which I think we all agree saved most of us. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, things have only gotten better. The future is bright, man, and we appreciate everything you do for the network.
Yes, definitely appreciate it. Thank you so much, and happy anniversary. I guess I have water. I don't have any like glasses or anything.
Well, Cinco de Mayo, so I may have a little tequila in here.
Just me a little water.
That's why you're the best, man. Maybe I keep it straight. All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Coach. You're the best.
All right.